In November 1972, three college students were found dead under brutal circumstances in Carville, Texas. It was a quiet town then, an unlikely place for what would become one of the strangest and most enduring mysteries of the time. The investigation was led by a local detective familiar with both Carville's quirks and its secrets. This detective's detailed records reveal an account that ranges from methodical police work to theories bordering on the paranormal, with some investigators and even townsfolk believing a werewolf could have been involved. This is the story of a tragedy that shook a small Texas town, creating waves of speculation and fear. The bizarre state of the students' bodies found just outside Carville left questions about what had really happened. Some claim the killer may not have been human at all. Carville was a small, close knit community in the 1970s. It was a place where everyone knew each other, a town grounded in routine and tradition. But as the detective would find, a certain mystery had been lurking for years, surfacing in whispered stories of strange sights in the woods, howls on dark nights, and mutilated livestock. Three young people had come to Carville for a weekend retreat, an escape from their studies and the pressure of city life. The weekend ended with their untimely deaths. The bodies were found by a local, partially hidden in thick brush near the edge of town. Initial reports described severe lacerations as if inflicted by a large, ferocious animal, though no animals in the region were known to attack humans in such a manner. Each student had their own story, a path leading them to Carville that fateful weekend. Friends remembered them as vibrant, intelligent, and close-knit. They had little in common with the strange violence that would end their lives. Local authorities initially suspected a wild animal attack, but certain signs pointed toward human involvement. Tool marks and positions of the bodies that indicated intentionality. The detective, a seasoned investigator familiar with the area, arrived on the scene the next day. The state of the bodies, coupled with locals' rumors, would soon nudge him toward unusual conclusions. Upon arriving, he was immediately struck by the depth and brutality of the injuries. A seasoned professional, he knew animal attacks, but these injuries were different. Deep, calculated, and far too organized. The detective approached the case meticulously, collecting blood samples, fingerprints, and other evidence. A torn fragment of fabric, unusual hair samples, and claw marks suggested a non-human assailant or possibly an elaborate setup. The autopsy reports reinforced that the injuries were abnormal. Claw-like marks, too large for any known animal, were found on the bodies, deep scratches that tore through skin and bone. Forensic analysis showed faint chemical residues, perhaps evidence of a tool or claw mechanism. As word of the unusual details spread, theories took on a paranormal tone. Some officers began to speculate. Could this have been the work of a werewolf? Legends of werewolves were common in early Texas folklore, and Carville was no stranger to tales of shadowy figures and wolves. However, the detective knew better than to let folklore drive his investigation. He dug into these stories as part of his research, acknowledging the fear that gripped the community. Local interviews uncovered more than a few claims of a large creature seen in the area on moonlit nights. There were descriptions of an animal, both wolf-like and humanoid, prowling the woods for years. Despite the eyewitness accounts, skeptics pointed out the lack of any hard evidence proving the existence of such creatures, emphasizing that fear, darkness, and the trauma of seeing mutilated bodies might have distorted memories. Some investigators felt increasingly convinced that a supernatural being was at work, particularly as more strange details emerged. Was it possible a werewolf was responsible? After months of analysis, the detective drew his conclusions, weighing the physical evidence against folklore and locals' testimonies. He remained cautious, but his final report acknowledged the report's oddities. Though he stopped short of confirming supernatural involvement, the detective couldn't explain every detail. The lacerations, unusual hair samples, and claw like markings all left questions about what or who was responsible. Despite the detectives' exhaustive investigation, several mysteries persisted. No clear motive, suspect, or definitive explanation could account for the injuries. Some aspects of the evidence even appeared to have been tampered with, as if someone or something had tried to mislead the investigation. To this day, Carville residents still debate whether the truth of what happened lies in natural or supernatural realms. The Carville case forever altered the community. The violent deaths and rumors of a werewolf cast a lasting shadow over the town. Many locals grew cautious, especially during full moons, and the town's once thriving camping sites saw fewer visitors. The detective himself, deeply affected by the case's unresolved nature, became somewhat of a recluse in his later years, unwilling to discuss the details beyond his official report. The Carville case isn't alone in American folklore. Over the years, other mysterious deaths have sparked similar theories. Historical cases across the country, especially in rural areas, have reported mutilations or bizarre injuries attributed to animalistic assailants, though none with conclusive evidence. These eerie parallels make the Carville incident all the more compelling. Some experts believe that local lore may have colored the case, while psychologists suggest werewolf syndrome or lycanthropy, a rare condition where individuals believe they can transform into wolves, could offer an explanation. Anthropologists note that werewolf stories often arise in communities under stress, acting as metaphors for internal fears or traumas. While not all investigators accept a supernatural explanation, they agree that the case is unlike any other. Ultimately, the Carville tragedy remains an unsolved mystery. For some, it was a horrific but explainable murder case. For others, the strange evidence, disturbing injuries, and eyewitness accounts hint at something darker. The detective's account preserved in police records serves as both an open-ended case file and a grim reminder of what could exist beyond our understanding. Whether it was murder or myth, the Carville case continues to haunt those who dare to remember.